Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome one and all, and thank you all so much for attending today's session, Top 5 Myths Demystified or Debunked using Adobe Captivate Prime. I'm Dr. Alan Partridge, Senior E-Learning Evangelist with Adobe, and I'm thrilled as always to get to spend some time with you here today. If you haven't had a chance, I encourage you to go ahead and fill out the poll in the lower left-hand corner. It gives me a sense of what your role is in your organization, and it'll help me guide the conversation today to make sure that it hits the needs of the most people possible in the room. Today's crowd is not too terribly huge, and so as a result, I'll leave the chat pod wide open on the left-hand side. I encourage you to go ahead and ask questions over there on the left side. There are other folks here in the room joining me today who will also be able to jump in and answer your questions, and I'll try to answer your questions as we go through today's session as well. So welcome one and all, and we do have a lot of information to cover today, so without further ado, let's dive right in and check out those myths. So when presented with today's topic, I wanted to really take a closer look at this and try to understand what are the kind of misconceptions that I hear from people when I talk to them about their learning management system, about what can be done with the learning management system. It occurs to me that there are a few perspectives to look at that from the perspective of the learner, from the perspective of the author, from the perspective of administrators and managers. And so as I speak to those issues today, I'll try and address them from those various perspectives. I think along the way, there's a great opportunity for me to talk about ways that you can maximize the impact of your learning by fostering a learning culture, creating deeper engagement, and by aligning the content that you create and distribute, the things that you deploy, the learning that you make available to your trainees, aligning that content to the goals of your organization. That can really maximize the impact of learning in your organization. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit today as well. And then finally, I'll of course talk about the new Adobe Captivate Prime, the new learning management system from Adobe. I'm lucky to be able to tell you about the process by which we created it and the research that we used to help inform the decisions to try and make it an LMS that really does answer the needs of today's e-learning community. One of the things that I'll hit on, and you'll note that I hit on it, is that ease of use and ease of setup are major factors that need to be considered. And there's a lot of evidence, just anecdotal evidence in talking to everyone, that ease of use has been a major stumbling block and one of the major reasons people are frustrated with their existing systems. But there's also some new research evidence, and I'll present that evidence to you today and give you a sense of what's going on in terms of people's concerns about the ease of use. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about maximizing the return on investment for you, for your learners, for your organization, because it grows more and more important in training today. All right. So what are the top 5 LMS myths? Well, these are the ones that we identified. And I say we because we actually got together and talked about it with the management team and myself and the e-learning developers. And we said, you know what, we really think these are the things that people come to us the most frequently, and they're convinced that these are the cases. So a lot of folks, when they're first considering adding an LMS, the big concern they have is it's too complicated. In fact, when I taught graduate students in instructional design and e-learning, a lot of the other instructors didn't even touch on learning management systems because they would say this. They would say, it's too complicated. It's just too complicated. And these were graduate students. And of course, I dove right in. But you know what? There is a history behind the it's too complicated kind of belief. And I think that we can pretty well debunk that now. And certainly with the new Captivate Prime, I'll show you how it doesn't have to be too complicated to use a learning management system. In fact, it can be just as easy as using your friendly neighborhood iPad app. It can be a very, very simple kind of experience. The second major myth is that it's an operational expense rather than a way to actually provide a contribution to the company. And this is a very dangerous and expensive myth. This is the myth that causes trainers, that causes folks in e-learning, that causes managers of learning, directors of learning to lose jobs. And it's a very, very painful kind of a belief. But this is a belief that's held by a lot of organizations. They believe that ultimately their learning management is about compliance, and it's about tracking and reporting based on regulatory requirements. And while that's true, that's not all it should be. And so we really are in a period of transformation in e-learning where we're extending our understanding of what training and learning can do. And if you've studied instructional design and you're a learning enthusiast like I am, you're like, of course it can do all these things. It's always been able to do all these things. Well, of course it can. But getting that message to the senior level, to the boardroom, has been a real struggle. And your learning management system, we believe, should provide you with the tools to be able to take that story of how you're making a difference in terms of the actual changes that are happening in an organization as the result of your training. So we're going to debunk that myth today and talk about that as being something considerably more than an operational expense. The third one is becoming less of a concern, but still a lot of people believe that LMSs don't support rich media. I'm amazed at how many times before we created Prime, we would hear from people, I can't use that file in my LMS. My LMS doesn't support this or doesn't support that. And today, an LMS should support all of the forms of rich media experiences that you want to use as an e-learning developer. So it's important to have that kind of an architecture for support. And it's become more and more a concern as we move to a more and more mobile audience. So not only does it need to support all the rich media that you've become accustomed to, and more importantly, that your learners have become accustomed to, it also needs to support it both for laptop and desktop computers and for mobile devices like tablets. The fourth one is that it's exclusively for e-learning courses. And unfortunately, there are LMSs out there that are really just a place where you can upload your LMS, your e-learning course, and that's about it. It's CBT, computer-based training. Well, an LMS doesn't need to be that way. An LMS can be a way to blend instruction and to create a central hub where all of the instruction can be aggregated together and you can evaluate it together. And then finally, there's a myth that sort of the data just goes into a big repository and it's now useless. It's impossible to get to, it's too hard to generate reports, the reports don't mean anything to anyone. All of these kinds of things are a big problem. So that's the basis upon which today's session rests, these 5 central myths. So let's crack on that first one, the notion that an LMS is simply too difficult. An LMS is hard to use, hard to set up, hard to live with. We went around the world for 2.5 years talking to people about their LMSs in the process of designing and creating Adobe Captivate Prime. And probably one of the most shocking moments I had is I was talking with a manufacturing company that had just adopted a new LMS. And I was trying to understand, what their search process had been like, what made them choose one over another, and what kinds of factors were involved. And we were talking about the setup, the initial setup of the LMS. And you could have picked my jaw up off the floor when the manager of learning told me that it took 9 months to actually set up and deploy and make live their learning management system. I was flabbergasted. When I read recent studies that said that in fact most LMSs take more than 6 months to get deployed and set up and everything in place, I was absolutely stunned. And so one of the goals that we had with Captivate Prime and that we've been able to pull off with Captivate Prime is a goal of simplifying the setup so that the setup becomes an incredibly easy experience, something that an average person can do. You do not need an IT degree to pull it off. There's no cables to mess with, no servers to wrestle with. You can do it yourself in a very short period of time. This is an interesting new report from the eLearning Guild. Adobe co-sponsored this report with the eLearning Guild, and we wanted to ask a series of questions about that experience, right? So you can see here that what I find interesting about this particular element within the report uh, is that these are the things that folks identified as being the most important in their organization. Create an e-learning culture in which learners are better motivated to learn and to continue their development. Providing an exceptional learning experience that better supports learning and enhances knowledge retention. Track all learning so as to better demonstrate learning impact to business leaders. And then ease of setup and managing an LMS. Notice that ease of setup and managing an LMS. 57% of the survey respondents found it extremely important. 33% found it very important. Only 10% said that it was somewhat or not important. So basically, you're looking at 90% of everybody agrees that this is a hugely important facet. I also think it's really encouraging to look at this and see, with all the sort of disillusionment that we see in folks in the learning and training industry, look at how optimistic and how learning focused these responses are. It's really very encouraging. All right. So the ease of setup obviously was a big factor for us in creating Adobe Captivate Prime. We wanted to create something that looked modern, that felt modern, and that had that kind of ease of use, that nothing is too far buried. I can just click here or click there. The thing that I need is most likely to be the thing that's front and center. We wanted to ease the workflow in regard to a lot of these things about LMSs that have been sort of convoluted and confusing. The core then is a core that makes the whole experience unified, simple, and straightforward. Bob asks a good question here about how to make sure that the LMS is accessible for visually impaired learners. So Bob, when you're looking at an LMS and you want to check for the accessibility for most of your e-learning content that's developed today, whether it's in Captivate or Presenter or in Lectora or Storyline, that content, when its output is HTML5, which is the dominant output mechanism, is generally built to be compliant with a tool they call JAWS. And JAWS is the predominant reader in the space for the visually impaired. You want to make sure that the content that has been made available through JAWS is accessible in a format, and this depends on how that accessibility should be certified. Depends on how your LMS is structured. So, for example, Prime is structured in as a cloud service, as are just over 50% of LMSs today. So as you're looking at your LMSs, you want to look at them. If they're cloud-based, you want them to be compatible with what people sometimes call WCAG. I know it just sounds like I coughed something up there, right? It's WCAG 2.0. So the WCAG 2.0 standard is the standard used for certifying cloud-based or more importantly, HTML web-based front-end technologies, and acknowledging that those actually have what you need in terms of accessibility. But underlying that is an architecture of authoring tools needing to actually embed all that information in the content to begin with. So it's a multi-tiered kind of thing. You need to make sure that the authoring tool is actually outputting content that is compliant with ADA 508 WCAG standards. And then when you get it into your LMS, that LMS needs to also allow the browser to read the content through. And so look for WCAG as it relates to cloud-based LMS, and look for ADA 508 as it relates to proprietary on-prem, on your own facility server-based kind of LMS. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Okay. All right. Interesting to note also, I see a couple of people, organizational effectiveness consultant and talent tech consultant. Thanks for sharing those. It helps to know kind of the roles that you're playing in your organization. If it falls outside of those, helps me get a sense of how to make sure that I'm getting everybody the information that they need. Okay. So that ease of use extends into the way that content is organized in Prime. For example, we organize the content by modules. The modules represent different types of content like Word documents, PowerPoints, PDFs, as well as computer-based training like e-learning units, Captivate published output or presenter output, storyline content, lectora content, and so on. All of these things become modules, and these are the smallest common unit. Those modules then combine with blended instructional elements to create courses, and then courses can be combined to create whole programs of learning. So from the perspective of the director of learning or the person who's in charge of learning, you're generally trying to create things like onboarding or trying to create a learning program for entry-level managers or a learning program that shifts level 1 programmers to level 2 engineers and so on. So those learning programs are important as collections of different courses. And of course, courses are a collection both of the kind of content that you add as modules and of the blended instruction, face-to-face, virtual conferencing, activities that are outside of your LMS, and the courses themselves. And so that's how it's structured inside of Prime. And we'll take a look at that to see how it works. And then the other thing that Prime does is eases the process of getting all your people in. So it makes it very simple to load all of your people into the system and knowing everything about them. Who's in a group with another person, who's in this division, who's supervised by that person, and so on. And then it also eases your process of enrolling people, both by letting you use a smart enroller to add whole groups of people to things, or to automate that process using the automated learning plans. Those give you a way to actually automatically enroll people. So imagine things like you've got new people coming into your company every day. Obviously, you don't want to sit at your desk and tediously enroll that new person into every single course or element that they would need. Instead, you want to be able to automate that process so that overnight, when your HR database updates, that information can be grabbed and then used to trigger automated enrollment for that person into whatever learning programs or courses that are appropriate for them, given a change in role, maybe they move to a new city and so on. And then of course you can automate things, set up rules to automate things based on things they do. Like if they just completed one course, maybe you want them to wait 2 weeks and then automatically enroll them into another course. So all of these things are set up to ease your workflow, ease the experience of managing the learners, and do all that kind of thing. So let's take a quick look at that, because I know that it's often difficult to kind of visualize these things until you actually take a look. So I'm going to jump back and forth a little bit today. I'll share my screen right now for you, but you'll see that I'm jumping back and forth between the panel that we were on, between this screen sharing panel, so that you can kind of get a look at it. So when we look at Adobe Captivate Prime, we're actually looking at it in the browser because it is a cloud-based learning management system. And I've done kind of a Julia Child setup here. I've got my browser open, but I have actually 3 tabs that are Prime. So this one is the Learner tab, and then this one is the Author tab. This is where the author would upload the content. And this last one over here is the Administrators tab. And so the experience is going to be slightly different for each of those people depending on what role they're playing. There's an additional role that you can play inside of Prime, and that's the role of the manager. So if you're looking at it in the context of the manager, then your experience obviously would be slightly different there as well. Okay, so we were talking about the ease of use and the ease of access and those kinds of things. One of the best ways to see that is in the user interfaces in each of these cases. Let's start with the author, because I think that as I looked, most of the people in the room are involved as e-learning developers, instructional designers. Most of the people are either authoring content or have some relationship to the authoring of content. And I see a few people also that are administering. So we'll take a look at the Administrator tab here in a second as well. But just to give you a sense of how simple these things are, basically there are 2 major functions that people do as an author. One is to create learning modules, and the other is to create courses by combining those modules together with blended learning kinds of instructions. So the process of creating modules is very simple. Just click Create Modules, give a module a name, give it some kind of a time duration, ideally a little description, and then you can simply click here to upload an actual file. You also have the option to tag your modules with various tags, and those tags are used in search later when people are trying to search and discover if that's a piece of content that they actually want. I'll just exit there without saving just to show you once those modules are uploaded, you can see that the modules are now included where you can go back in and edit them. You can upload a module again to make changes. You can alter the tags and so on. So back then on that main authoring page, we now have the ability to go in and create courses. So using that great big button again, I'll just click on Create Course. Here I would give a course a name. And then here I'm free to add elements to the course. I could put in a test out if I wanted or add pre-work, but most of the time what you want to do is just add modules to courses. Those modules in courses come in different types. The self-paced module is the Captivate course, presenter course, or Word document, video, any of those kinds of things are all self-paced modules. The virtual classroom is any virtual conferencing solution. So whether you're using Adobe Connect or WebEx or something else, you can attach that and associate that here inside of the blended instruction, inside the course itself. Same thing with the classroom module is for face-to-face instruction. Most people still do have face-to-face training, and you need somewhere to be able to track it. And then finally, the activity module is a way to be able to link to things that are maybe on a partner's site, or maybe you want to send them out to a YouTube video or to a Pinterest board or a discussion board. You can do that there. Adding a self-paced module is as simple as clicking on self-paced module and then selecting those modules that you actually want included, and then you click Add, and done when you're done. You can add as many of those elements as you want to a course, and that builds up a course into a common cohesive thing. And then Prime sees courses as these little smart cards, and you can work with those courses as an author or as an administrator. So if, for example, I switch over to the Administrator tab, there I can work with courses that exist inside of my system as an administrator. And there you can, again, see that kind of ease of use in action. An administrator, for example, might want to enroll learners into a course. So they simply click on Enroll Learners, and then by typing any character, they can automatically get all the people with that letter A in their name, or the direct reports of people with an A in their name, or managers' teams, or even groups. Prime intelligently looks at all of your HR data and finds the common groups. So even if you had an HR data field called hobbies, and in those hobbies there were a bunch of people who did water skiing and other people who did skydiving, it would automatically create a group of skydivers and a group of water skiers. So it gives you a great way to be able to do that. You can also, for example, just enroll everybody. There you see I've enrolled all learners, and if I want to see them, I can actually break it down, open it up, and even choose to opt out individual people just by clicking on the little X. Now, of course, that's the way that you can do it by hand. You can also do the whole thing automatically. So Prime is set up to make these things just very intuitive, very easy to do, very easy to build. Let me pop back in now into the room so that we can keep moving along, and I'll see if you guys have questions. Popping back, switching over to our discussion. All right. Yes, and M. Goodson asks if the assignment enrollment can be performed by rules, and yes, we'll probably get a chance to look at that here in a second. If not, we can, give you an email. You can chat back and forth with us. But yes, you can create rules, and you can even filter the rules so that you can say, upon completion of this thing, then after this long, I want you to assign them to be enrolled into this and that, and only do that if they match these filters. So only if they're an engineer, not if they're this other thing. You really have a lot of flexibility there. Okay, so that second one, learning management is not an operational expense. It's an operational expense, not an investment in success. And it's really true that it's an investment in success. It really isn't just an operational expense. It's something really substantially more important. So what you can do here is see this represented through Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick proposed in the 1950s something called knowledge, skills, and attitudes as a way to understand what was happening inside of your training. And as we looked at it, we looked at it and said, you know what, it's really critical that courses be something that can be aligned to the skills if business leaders are going to be able to see that their strategic plans are actually being implemented. Let me give you a sense of what I mean by that. So if you're not familiar with Kirkpatrick, the core notion is this: a skill is some kind of specific learning activity. But remember, Kirkpatrick defines knowledge, skills, and attributes. What he's really saying is there's kind of core information that you need to know, there are skills that you need to acquire, and then there are behaviors that you need to practice in order to really have mastery over something. And we think of that as what we call a competency. So for trainers, it's often the competency and the skills that are focused on in order to best understand what do I need to do to improve the knowledge and the skills of the learners. So by aligning these skills to the course materials that are offered, it becomes possible using Prime to actually set up an architecture where you can show the boardroom that you made the change that they requested in their strategic plan. Think of it this way. The board passes down a mandate that sort of says, we want to improve our enterprise sales globally next year. What does that mean to you as a learning developer, as a trainer, as a person in charge of all learning in the organization? Well, that they want to improve it means they want to increase the ability, the skills of the employees who are actually doing that enterprise global sales. So what would those people need? They'll need skills that help them with global outreach. They'll need skills that help them with enterprise communication. They'll need skills that help them with contract negotiation for global customers. And there will be a wide variety of skills that will be directly related to the goal. Now, the key here is that most learning management systems will let you develop the courses. Most will let you deploy the courses and even track and see whether people took the quizzes and passed them. What you need is to go one step further and say, did Bob actually get results? Did Bob actually show that he was applying the skills that he learned on the job in the weeks after he completed the course? So Kirkpatrick defines that next level as the behavior level and the results level. So there's a way that you can assess these things in a learning management system. The first is the reaction of the learner. You can look at the reaction of the learner and say, okay, did the learner feel that the course was giving them the information they wanted? Usually we do this through Likert questions. That's how it's done in Prime, and that's how it's done in most learning management systems. That's the reaction phase. The learning phase is the phase where we're looking at this and saying, what happened in the course itself? Did they pass the quiz? Did they read the information? Did they go through the slides? Did they read the Word docs and so on? Prime has some great edges there because it's able to actually track in detail whether or not they looked at things like PDFs and Word docs and how much of videos did they actually consume. But the one that's major, that really makes a difference in terms of return on investment, is behavior. Knowing whether they actually did that on the job, whether the skills were applied on the job long after the course is complete, requires that you ask somebody who supervises them, ask a manager, someone who works with them, whether or not they're applying those newfound skills now that a month or more has passed. And that's what Prime allows you to do with the behavior assessment, the behavior feedback. It sends a message to the manager of the trainee about 5 weeks after the course is complete and asks them to explain to what degree that employee has been applying those skills that they learned. That directly impacts the results, and the results are what Kirkpatrick recommended that you do. Bring those results back to the boardroom so that people in the boardroom could easily see, yes, this is an actual positive net result. All right? Cool. So, all of that information is combined into a course effectiveness rating. That information is the L1 feedback, what we call smile sheets feedback, the L2 feedback, which is the results of the course, and then the L3 feedback, the manager's feedback. And that's all combined into the course effectiveness, making for a very positive net experience for the effectiveness rating. We give more weight to the effectiveness than we give to the course results and than we give to the feedback results. So you get a very, very nice result. Yeah, and I see that Ashwin is saying, can I answer questions? And yeah, absolutely, Ashwin, please do. Okay. So let's take a look at that then as the skills inside of Captivate Prime. And I'll jump over and show you how skills are set up. Again, very simple to do, straightforward, easy, easy peasy. So I'm going to share my screen one more time and then jump in here. And we're right back here into the administrator panel. You'll notice here in the admin panel, I have the ability to go in and work with the skills. To set up a skill, all you have to do is click this add button right here. And then you simply give the skill a name. We were just talking about, I think we were just talking about, let's say global litigation or something like that. So maybe we're training the legal team. I give a brief description, and then here I can have as many levels as I want. I decide how many credits that I want to require. So in my case, I'm going to require 6 credits to be complete from level 1 courses. And then I decide what reward I want to give them, what badge I want to give them for completing that level. You can then add as many levels as you want. Think of them as beginning. Sorry, you can add 3 levels, beginning, intermediate, and advanced levels. You can add up to those 3 levels and set them up, customize them the way that you would like. If you think of it sort of like college credits, you can build this up in whatever fashion is most appropriate for your organization. Then you simply hit save when you're done, and you'll get a new skill here inside of the skill listings. And you can see the levels have been defined, the credits assigned are there, and you can also see a listing of how many courses have been built in the system to go toward those particular credits. From the learner's perspective, they see a map of the skills that have been assigned to them. So from your perspective as an administrator, that means that you can, for example, say, I need to assign the contract negotiation skill to some specific people. You click on the contract negotiation box, and then click the actions assigned to learner. Again, that same ability exists for you to simply click on a letter or something and choose the learners you actually want to assign that to. Maybe I want to assign that to Miranda's team. I choose Miranda's team, I click save, and now that skill has been automatically assigned to every member of Miranda's team. Any member of Miranda's team would then come here to their learner interface and see the skills. And then from there, they can say, you know what, I've been assigned a skill like effective communication or listens actively. I need to shop in the catalog for a skill that meets that need. Or you can simply assign them courses that meet the skill needs that they have. So it's a great architecture for building that kind of solution. All right, so let me jump back into our presentation. And we'll keep rolling along here. All right. Okay. So the third myth Learning management systems don't meet the needs of rich interactivity, streaming video, and learner engagement common in today's computer applications. Not true. Not with Captivate Prime. So Captivate Prime does a couple of things quite differently. One, it includes a fluidic player. Now the fluidic player is a player that gets rid of the need for all pop-ups, all plugins, etc. It simply leverages the browser technology, what's called HTML5 technology, to show you all the learning content in a single, beautiful, big learning window. I often call this YouTube for e-learning. It's just a beautiful way to encounter all your e-learning. It looks the same whether you're on a laptop, a desktop, or your tablet, and it also includes the ability for you to have that material offline in a tablet environment. So you can actually do it offline, and then when you get back on a network, it automatically resyncs to the network. It also allows you to ingest a huge variety of different course content. We leverage Adobe's technology for conversion of files, so we simplified the process for you so that you don't have to do a bunch of file conversions. Think of it this way. You probably have Word documents that you'd like to be able to include in your learning. No problem. You simply upload the Word document just as it is. You don't have to change anything. What we'll do is then Prime on the back end will automatically convert the Word document into an HTML5 document. That makes it possible for us to know things like how far into the document did the learner actually get. And even it makes it possible for you to do things like say they must completely read all of this document or they don't get credit for it. Or you can say they must read 70% or 50%. The same thing is true of Word documents, is true of PowerPoints. We automatically convert it. We automatically put it up for you. All you have to do is just load up the PowerPoint. And then the same thing is also true for PDF documents. So PDF documents, Word documents, PowerPoints, we convert them all and make them all easily ingestible and all trackable. Now, we took that one step further and said, you know what, a lot of e-learning developers are using video, huge amounts of video, and it's a total pain in the backside. And the reason it's a pain is because most of us as e-learning developers, instructional designers, we don't study media and media encoding and data encryption and video streaming and things like that. So when it comes time to get the video to the learners, oftentimes the video does not get delivered very well because there's not a nice solution in place. Well, Captivate Prime includes a state-of-the-art, state-of-the-industry video streaming solution. So what happens is you simply upload video in any major video format. That's all you have to do. Just upload the video as a QuickTime movie or an MP4 or any of the major video file formats. On the back end, we automatically convert that video into a streaming video. And not only do we do that, but we rip about 24 copies and we automate the process for you. So we automatically optimize all of those different videos for different bandwidths, people that are in different strengths of network, and we optimize them all for different screen sizes. And the result is that the person gets exactly the video they need, and they get it streaming to them effortlessly. It starts right away, it plays fluidly, it plays all the way through, no matter where they are on the planet, no matter what kind of device they're using. So it really simplifies that process. From your perspective, you just put a video in, and from the learner's perspective, they get a video no matter what. And it's a video that works and makes sense. Now, the last kind of content that gets ingested into that fluidic player is any e-learning content that is SCORM compliant, AICC compliant, or Tin Can XAPI compliant. So whether it's Captivate or Presenter, or whether it's Lectora or Storyline, it doesn't matter. You simply upload that e-learning content, and then Prime plays that content back. Okay? So it's a very simple process, one that's easy to use and easy to work with. Let's take a quick look at that. We'll take a look at the fluidic player and see what it looks like when we actually put that content together and make that content live for your learners. So I'm sharing my screen again. Here I am on the learner page. You remember I had been assigned a skill of listens actively. So as a learner, I can go into my catalog, and there in the catalog I can search through courses that are available to me. This one looks interesting because it satisfies the listens actively specific skill, and I'm going to explore it so I can decide, do I want to take this course? I can see the badge that I'll earn. I'll see how much time it takes to take the course, and I simply enroll in it. And then when I'm ready to start, I click on Start. Now, once I've started my course, I'll actually be able to take the whole thing full screen. So I'm going to click here on the interface to go full screen. I'm going to double check here to do a reality check, make sure you can see. Okay, and you can see that I actually now have my e-learning content playing. You may even be able to hear it in the background. I've got my speakers on a little bit, and you can hear this is actually a piece of Captivate content. So the Captivate content has an introduction. It's playing through that introduction now. I can actually go in and look at the notes and take notes. And one of the cool things here is that I can say, oh, I want to make a comment. And you'll notice the Captivate content, and this is the same with presenter content, presenter video content, and videos that you upload, that content will automatically pause when you go to take a note as a learner. When you click it and add that note as a learner, it automatically restarts the playback of the content. Here you can see that a time code has been added, and that will make it so that the learner can automatically go back, not just to the course, not just to the module, but right into that exact time code of that module. So imagine that with longer pieces of content. It gives you an amazing way as a learner to be able to take a note and then use that note later. You can email it yourself, you can save that note, you can email it to others and so on, and be able to get back to that moment in the course where you made the note so that it makes the most sense. And of course, all this content can be interactive and more. Now I'm jumping ahead in this overall experience. I'm going to jump ahead and take a look at a PowerPoint. Just to give you a sense of what's in this specific course, I'm going to look here at the master description of all the content in the course. This one has a Captivate file, it has a video file, and then a PowerPoint document. Now this PowerPoint document is 6 pages long, and Captivate Prime knows that it's 6 pages long. It also has the ability to scale it down so that people can see one whole slide at a time if they want. They can scroll through the content. And that's what I mean by that adaptive fluidic player. It changes the playback controls to adjust to fit the needs of the specifics of the course that's actually loaded into it at that moment in time. Now it also is reading how far I've gotten into the course. So you'll notice that it sees that I'm on page 3 of 6 and all the way to page 6 of 6. And because of that, you're able to actually put in things like gates and say, you know, this content has to be completed before I can actually get it done. Notice how easily you can see what's been tracked, what's been completed, and things that haven't been touched yet inside the course. And there's a simple progress bar to tell the learner, you know, I've completed half of the course so far. All right, so I'm going to jump back over into our room again, and hopefully I can get faster at jumping back and continue. All right. Good question. I see a question from Sismon about customizability. Excellent question. So right now, and it's a great chance to introduce sort of our basic philosophy about Captivate Prime. Right now, the skinning, the ability to change the colors and customize the colors has not yet been introduced. It is on our roadmap, and it's on our roadmap for June. We just delivered the first update from our roadmap on February 28th that included new job aids libraries and a bunch of other new features. We actually publish all of the information about our roadmap and make it available to you. If you want it, send me an email and I'll be happy to send it to you. You can also find it in a number of slide decks online. We're sharing that roadmap all the way out 3 versions in the future so that our customers can know what is it that we're planning to do exactly. When can they plan on an update coming? What features are coming down the pipe. And we're also working very closely with all of our customers to listen to their needs. Skinning is one example. We heard early on from folks that they wanted to be able to customize the look and feel so that it matched their corporate brand and identity. We've got some features in there for corporate brand, like icon, like logos and your corporate name and so forth and so on. We've got several things that you can customize to make it look like your company. And of course, we've made it so that you can launch it from a page that looks and feels like your company. And then in June, we'll be adding all of those customizations with skinning to make it possible for you to go deep and skin virtually every aspect of it so that it has the look and feel that you want your learners to see in your organization. So great question. Hopefully you understood both what we're doing with the roadmap as a whole and the specific response to your question, Sismon, about the skinning and what's coming up with the skinning. By the way, it does, Prime takes your table of contents. Now, the sample we looked at didn't have a table of contents, but it will take your table of contents if you developed it in Captivate, Presenter, and so on. It'll take that table of contents and actually load it into the table of contents element inside of Prime. So it'll just bring it over that way. So our fourth myth, that an LMS is exclusively for e-learning courses. We can debunk that one pretty easily. In fact, just looking at all of the different kinds of content that we saw that we can ingest inside of Prime so far is a great way to debunk that it's only for your courses. But there are a lot of other ways that people are using LMSs today. They use it for blended learning, they use it for job aid distribution. Tons of people essentially needed a common document library. And having that job aids library inside Captivate Prime gives you a great way to be able to centralize the storage, handle the distribution, and track the fact that it's been accessed and downloaded so that you know that people have picked it up. It's a way to finally know. If you put a PDF online and you were hoping people would look at it, a way to finally determine whether or not they've actually accessed that piece of content. You get a great way to be able to mix face-to-face. That FWF should say face-to-face. I'm laughing at my inability to type. It should say that you can mix your blended learning, your face-to-face, your virtual conferencing, and your e-learning. You can really get good use out of those job aids and use them as a library as well. Now, Captivate Prime also supports the attachment of any file format at all content to an individual course. So outside of the library, if you want to add content that's in some crazy file format that's only appropriate to your organization, anything, you can attach that to a specific course and it will become a downloadable piece of content attached to that course. Inside the job aids library, Captivate Prime allows you to associate the kinds of content that we've talked about for the Fluidic player, the Word docs, the PDFs, the PowerPoints, videos, and SCORM, AICC, and XAPI content. You'll also find that people are using announcements, scheduling, and reminders inside of their learning management systems in order to communicate with and to approach the needs of the e-learning community, of their trainees as a whole. And so really this notion that it's only for e-learning courses as CBT, really not the case. You've got just a huge number of different things that can be done with your LMS. It also is not just for desktops and laptops. Now it's really for mobile as well. With Captivate Prime, for example, we have apps for both iOS and for Android. These are free apps that anyone can download, and it's the Captivate Prime mobile app in both of those Android and iOS stores. What it does is allows them to not only access all of the Captivate Prime content on their device, but the big thing is, I mean, they could just open up a browser on their device and access Captivate Prime, right? Why an app? Well, the reason for the app is because it allows them to download the content, right? And that's the big factor here. People, when they're on the mobile device, they really want to be able to download it because sooner or later they're going to walk, ride, or run outside of a network connection. They're going to lose Wi-Fi. And at that moment, you don't usually want to stop working on your e-learning training, right? You want to keep going. So using the app, you can download that content. Now you may be thinking, okay, well that's great, but now how's it going to report back to the main system? Well, the way it does is by using a resync, and it auto syncs on reconnect. So when the network connection becomes available again, Captivate Prime, the mobile app, sniffs that out and automatically resyncs the data and gets all the latest information back up onto the servers. So it doesn't matter if you finish your course after the fact. Okay? Excellent. So the last one is this sort of notion that, what have I done? I've done a bad thing. I've done a bad thing. The last one, we're going to go all the way back. For those of you who are new to these sessions, it's fairly rare that I do something quite that crazy. Data collected is useless. So the last one is the notion that data collected is useless. I have no idea why I made this slide look like that. You see, I got the graphic right. Data collected is useless. Information overload. Okay. So apologies for that. It should say something like data collected is useless. And that's the last myth, right? That you can't do anything with your data once you actually get the data. And of course you can. In fact, using the data to maximize the impact is something we've already talked about in today's session. The notion that you can work from the central objectives and strategic plans of the organization, map that out into skills and knowledge that you want to train on, and then actually track how those skills are being learned based on the information that you're getting in terms of course effectiveness, in terms of a response from your managers, in terms of the outcomes of the course and all the other aspects of feedback. Getting that information gives you a course effectiveness that you can then bring back to the boardroom and say, I have evidence that we are actually improving and making improvements on the overall experience. But this is where people usually get into kind of a dueling death match with learning management systems. It's in the area of, what about the reports, right? Do the reports look good enough for me to send them up the chain? Are the reports easy to generate? Do I have to have a degree in statistics to understand them? And those kinds of questions. So what we've done with Prime is given you a very simple interface for creating the most common solutions in terms of reporting. And then we've given you the ability to customize those reports. Now you can generate a report from all the data in Prime as a custom report. You can set the whole thing up with what you want. So if you're a total data nut and you want to get in and dig into the stats and you want to create your own custom reports, no problem at all. But for those of you who, like me, are a little shy about that, what we've done is we've talked to learning developers all around the world and said, what are the most common reports you generate? And we found that these templates are the most commonly reported data. And then we found from them that the big differences are that they need to report that information, but for this specific group of people, or that information for this specific time frame, or that information through the end of this quarter, or compared to year on year, and so forth and so on. And so having the ability to work from the base templates and then adjust the filters of time and group and people and courses and so on gives you the ability to really quickly get the report that you need. And then the next step that we did is we said, you know what? Managers need access to reporting too. It's not just the person at the top administering. It's also the managers of individuals. They need to know, what are the outcomes? Are my people finished? How far are they? Did they start? Did they get halfway through? So managers need all those reports too. And we said, what would be awesome would be if you could subscribe to reports, so you could get a report regularly because data changes, right? And it would be awesome if you could have a reporting dashboard. So maybe you need to see 5 or 6 reports on a fairly regular basis, and maybe you even need to take some of those reports and share them with certain people. So maybe it's reports in this cluster that you need for this division of the company and another cluster that you need for another division, you can make as many custom dashboards as you want, share them with whomever you want in the organization, and even share reports across with managers and so on. So it gives you a lot of power to be able to set up a solution that really works and makes sense for people. Now, I know we had some questions about automation earlier. I probably should have joined this automation with some of the earlier discussion, but this is just a little bit more about the ease of setting things up from an administrative perspective with that automation. You can, trigger based on some change in the HR database, or trigger your rules based on something that's been completed inside of the learning content itself. And then you can also then say, I want to only do this rule if the user is a member of this specific group. And as I mentioned, Prime will sniff out from your HR data the membership and groups. Now, if you don't have an HR database and you're working with a different system, don't panic. Prime has a way to import comma delimited files, so you can actually set up files that can automate that process as well. Okay. So let's take a look at that, at the reporting. We have just a few minutes. Actually, we're really short on time. So let's take a quick poll. Would you guys rather ask some questions? Do you have unanswered questions you'd like me to answer, or would you rather I jump over and show you a little bit of reporting in the last 3 minutes? Show the report. Reporting. Show the report. Here we go. Let's jump into reporting. All right. So I'm going to click on sharing and share my screen again. And then I'm going to jump over and share. And I've lost my place. Okay, here we go. So administration. And then I'm going to go here under manage and reports. So I'm on the admin tab and I'm looking at the reports section. Now we have a number of sample reports that are available here that you can look at to get kind of a sense of what kind of reports are, what do they look like, what's the data look like. Let's dig right in and look at my reports that I have configured now. So these are my reports that I've actually set up. You'll notice that we use this paradigm. Bottom tree is a way that you can scan and scroll across the report data along the top. So you just grab an edge to scale it, move it like so, and of course you can show the entire report or some subsection of the report, whatever it is that you want to see. You'll also notice here from this sample that this is a report that I'm showing in a 2x2. I could resize this report to a 1x1, or vice versa, resize that report to a 2x2. You can also do a number of other things with reports. You can download them. When you download them, one of my favorite features is it downloads both the report and the graphs that are associated with it. So you get the Excel spreadsheet data and you get the graph. So if you wanted the graph for something, cut and paste into Word, you can do it. If you wanted the data that you can manipulate, you can do it. And it really gives you a great way to kind of work with that. You can also move these reports to various dashboards. As I mentioned before, you can subscribe to reports, so you can have as many subscriptions as you want. And of course, you can create custom reports. As many dashboards as you want. I'll click on Add Now to create a custom dashboard. You can see from this menu, quite simple. To fill out this dialog, I'm going to choose the report type. Custom lets me choose and set up everything on my own. We do support a y-axis and a secondary y-axis, as well as an x-axis. And in addition to that, we have those custom templates, which are templates that you can use to see what's going on. So I'm going to give this a new name. And you can see here that I've selected skill, and the states of the skill are going to be described here as skill achieved, skill assigned. I can choose either one of those. I also then have the ability to adjust the x-axis and set it against whatever specifics I happen to want to set it up against. I can also adjust the time span. I can also adjust the filters like the managers, the profile, and so on. I'm going to do a different one just to give you a sense, that there are all different ways to do this. And the data changes dynamically depending on what it is that you're trying to do. So you can see here, for example, if I wanted to do not started and other fields, I can do all that right there. I can also choose a secondary y-axis. I like course effectiveness. I can also modify the x-axis if I choose to. My time spans, you'll notice that my time spans differ depending on what it is that I'm actually evaluating. So it has intelligence about what it thinks of as a time span. And then, of course, your filters are all available for whatever the specific use case is. When I click on save, and then automatically that report gets generated, and you can see the report is here, and I've got my detail showing up just like that. So I will jump back into the room and see if there are any questions. I want to thank all of you for your participation in today's session. It has been fun. Hopefully you've learned something. I know I always learn something in these sessions. If you have any questions, my email is the worst kept secret on the internet. My email is alanp@adobe.com. Let me try and put that up for you so you can see it. alanp@adobe.com. There we go. alanp@adobe.com. So if you're wanting to know anything more, or if you'd like to hear more about Prime, you have any questions, want places to get more information and so on, feel free to reach out to me about that or about anything related to Adobe's e-learning tools and products. With that, I'll stop the recording, but stick around in the room a bit for any questions. Thanks, everybody.